The highway stretched endlessly before me, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the desolate desert landscape. I, Andrew, had been driving for hours, chasing the promise of a new life in a distant city. But as night descended and the stars began to twinkle overhead, a sense of unease settled upon me. My gas gauge was hovering perilously close to empty, and the nearest gas station was nothing but a mirage in the rearview mirror. Panic gnawed at the edges of my mind as I calculated the odds of reaching the next town before my car sputtered to a halt. The isolation was stifling, and the only sounds were the hum of the engine and the occasional gust of wind. The miles seemed to blend into one another, making the road feel like an unending nightmare. It was then that I spotted it, a hitchhiker on the side of the road. He appeared out of nowhere, as though materializing from the shimmering heat waves. The stranger was a disheveled man with sunburned skin and wild eyes that reflected the dim glow of my headlights. I couldn't quite place his age. He could have been anywhere between 30 and 50. I was wary of picking up hitchhikers, but my empathy overruled my better judgment. I pulled over and rolled down the window, asking if he needed a ride. He approached the car, and as he got closer, an unsettling chill washed over me. His eyes held a glint of something otherworldly, something that made me want to speed away, but it was too late. The man climbed into the passenger seat, and as I pulled back onto the highway, his presence loomed in the confined space of my car. His gaze remained locked on me, and he spoke in a hushed, gravelly voice. "Thank you for stopping. I've been out here for so long, waiting for someone like you to come along." I offered a polite nod and a forced smile, trying to shake off the unease that had settled upon me. I asked him where he was headed, but he simply responded, "I'm just going wherever the road takes me." The miles passed in silence, and I couldn't help but steal glances at my passenger from the corner of my eye. His features seemed to shift in the dim light, as though his face was an ever-changing mask of mystery. The gas gauge needle had dipped into the red, and the car's engine was beginning to stutter. Panic welled up in my chest as I prayed for a gas station to appear. The stranger's presence in the car had grown suffocating, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made a terrible mistake. As the car sputtered to a stop on the desolate highway, the stranger turned to me and said, "This is where I get off." My heart raced as I realized there was no way he could have known my car was about to run out of gas. I watched in horror as he opened the door and stepped out onto the road. In the dim moonlight, I saw his silhouette begin to dissolve, fading like a specter into the night. I fumbled to restart the engine, but it roared to life with a final shudder. The car had miraculously come back to life, and I found myself alone on the empty highway, the hitchhiker nowhere in sight. Fear gripped me as I sped away from the spot where he had vanished, my mind racing with questions. Who was that enigmatic stranger, and what had just transpired? The highway continued to stretch before me, but the isolation was now a living, breathing presence in the car. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed paths with something otherworldly, something beyond my comprehension. As I drove through the night, the road seemed to shift and warp, its familiarity replaced by an eerie sense of the unknown. Signs that had once indicated a nearby town or gas station now led to desolate, abandoned buildings or empty, pitch-black expanses. I was trapped in a never-ending loop of endless highway, each mile marker a cruel reminder of my predicament. Panic set in, and I began to question my sanity. How could a single, straight road stretch into infinity, leading me nowhere? Hours turned into days, and I lost all sense of time. My car's clock had stopped working, and the sun remained hidden behind a perpetual shroud of darkness. Hunger and exhaustion gnawed at me, and the highway's oppressive isolation had become an inescapable prison. In my desperate quest for answers, I turned the car around, determined to retrace my steps and find my way back. But no matter how far I drove, the same, unchanging scenery stretched out before me. The vanishing road had entrapped me, and I had become a prisoner of its desolation. I was losing my grip on reality, my mind unraveling as I continued to drive into the abyss. The endless highway had become my own personal hell, a nightmare from which I could not escape. And then, just when I had all but given up hope, the highway abruptly came to an end. I stood at the edge of a cliff, overlooking a vast, yawning abyss. The world had been reduced to nothing but darkness and emptiness. As I gazed into the void, a whisper of the hitchhiker's voice returned, sending shivers down my spine. "This is where I get off." In that moment, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, and I realized that I had encountered something otherworldly on that desolate highway. The vanishing road had taken me to the edge of existence, a place beyond time and space. I closed my eyes, embraced the void, and let go of the steering wheel. As I fell into the abyss, I understood that the highway had been a passage to a realm beyond human comprehension, a place where the rules of reality no longer applied. The road had claimed me, and I had become one with the vanishing highway, lost to the infinite darkness. It was a moonless night, and I found myself cruising down an eerie, desolate stretch of highway that seemed to go on forever. The engine's low hum was my only companion as I journeyed through the inky darkness, alone in my car. I, Davis, had always enjoyed long drives, but this one was different. This highway was known for its chilling legends and eerie stories. My GPS showed that I was on the infamous Blackwood Highway, a road that had earned a sinister reputation over the years. They said it was haunted, cursed, and that strange things happened to those who ventured along its winding path after dark. Most people avoided it, but my stubborn curiosity had led me here. As I drove, the tall trees on either side of the road cast long, menacing shadows. The eerie silence was broken only by the sound of my tires against the asphalt. I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as I navigated through the darkness. A strange sensation crept over me as if I were being watched. I shook it off, attributing it to the creepy ambience of the place. But as the miles passed, the feeling persisted and grew stronger. Glancing in my rearview mirror, I saw nothing but the unending road and a canopy of trees. I slowed down, deciding to pull over and check my surroundings. The moment my car came to a stop, a sudden burst of static crackled from my radio, filling the car with an unsettling noise. I fumbled with the dial, trying to silence it, but the eerie sound only intensified. Suddenly, a voice emerged from the static, a voice that sent a shiver down my spine. It was a whisper, barely audible, but it spoke my name, Sarah. My heart raced as I looked around in a panic. There was no one in sight, and my car's interior remained shrouded in darkness. I took a deep breath and told myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. Just as I was about to resume my drive, I heard the voice again, clearer this time, and accompanied by the feeling of a cold breath against my neck. Sarah, don't be afraid. I bolted from my car, abandoning it on the side of the highway. My heart pounded as I stumbled into the woods, desperately trying to put distance between me and whatever was inside my car. The whispering voice continued to follow me, echoing through the trees. It felt like hours as I trudged through the forest, guided only by the dim light of the moon. The voice grew louder, more insistent, and I could swear it was coming from different directions simultaneously. Sarah, stay with us. In my terrified haze, I stumbled upon a clearing and froze. Before me stood a circle of ghostly figures, their features obscured by shadow. The voice that had been haunting me now seemed to emanate from the collective presence before me. One of the figures stepped forward, a faint glimmer of recognition in its eyes. It whispered, Sarah, you've come back. I blinked in confusion, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. The figure extended an ethereal hand towards me, and I instinctively took a step back. The other figures in the circle began to chant softly, their voices a haunting melody. Realization dawned on me. I had heard stories of this place, stories of travelers who had ventured onto the Blackwood Highway and never returned. They spoke of a supernatural force that lured people back to the road, back to the highway's sinister embrace. I turned and fled from the clearing, the figure's chants growing fainter behind me. Panic consumed me as I desperately tried to find my way out of the woods. My breath came in ragged gasps as I crashed through the underbrush, branches scratching at my skin. Finally, I burst through the trees and back onto the highway. My car was where I had left it, abandoned on the side of the road. The static from the radio had ceased, and the night was eerily silent once more. I threw myself into the car, locked the doors, and sped away from the accursed highway. As I left it behind, I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw nothing but the vanishing road. Hours later, I reached a small, well-lit town and pulled into a gas station. I approached the attendant, my voice trembling as I recounted the terrifying experience on the Blackwood Highway. The attendant listened with a somber expression and said, "You're not the first to have encountered those malevolent spirits. Many have heard the whispers and seen the ghostly figures. They say the highway has a hunger, and it lures in unsuspecting travelers like a spider to its prey." As I continued my journey, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I couldn't forget the whispering voice, the haunting figures, and the terrifying truth of the Blackwood Highway. It was a road that would forever haunt my memories, a road I would never forget. The chilling legend of the highway would continue to draw in those who dared to venture into the darkness, never to be seen again. The highway stretched out before me, an endless ribbon of concrete that disappeared into the horizon. I was on a solo road trip, a journey to clear my mind and find solace in the solitude of the open road. The hum of my engine and the rhythmic thumping of my heart provided a hypnotic soundtrack to my drive, and I felt at ease as I ventured further into the night. The clock on my dashboard read 1:47 a.m. The highway was deserted, the only signs of life being the occasional flickering of the road lamps. The surrounding darkness was thick and oppressive, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease as I drove deeper into the void. My headlights cut through the darkness like a blade, illuminating the empty road ahead. The scenery was a blur, the monotony of the highway briefly interrupted by the occasional billboard advertising long-forgotten attractions. The only other source of light was the pale glow of the full moon, casting an eerie silver sheen over the landscape. Hours passed in the hypnotic rhythm of the road, and I began to wonder if I was the only soul for miles around. That's when I noticed it, a set of taillights in the distance. Relief washed over me, for the sight of another traveler made the desolation feel less oppressive. I eased up on the gas, allowing the vehicle behind me to draw closer. As it approached, I noticed it was an old, beaten-up pickup truck, covered in rust and dirt. The driver's side mirror was missing, and the bed of the truck seemed to be filled with a tangled mess of debris. I couldn't see the driver clearly through the dusty rear window, but I could make out a silhouette behind the wheel. The truck was driving at a consistent speed, neither overtaking me nor falling behind. It struck me as odd, but I figured the driver was merely in a hurry. Minutes turned into hours, and the truck remained doggedly behind me. I started to feel uneasy. The driver's reluctance to pass me was becoming a source of discomfort. I considered speeding up, letting the truck fall behind, but each time I increased my speed, the truck matched it. My unease deepened when I realized the truck had no license plate. My imagination began to churn with sinister possibilities. Who was this person behind the wheel, and what were their intentions? I decided to take the next exit I came across, hoping to lose the truck on the winding backroads. As I veered off the highway, the truck followed suit. Panic set in as I contemplated the possibility that I was being followed by a complete stranger in the dead of night. I navigated a maze of narrow, poorly lit rural roads, the truck always a few car lengths behind me. No matter how many turns I took or how fast I drove, the relentless follower stayed on my tail, a silent, looming presence. Desperation took hold, and I decided to make a run for it. I stomped on the gas pedal, my engine roaring to life. I pushed my car to its limits, but the truck continued to pursue me with unwavering determination. My heart pounded in my chest as I contemplated my next move. It was then that I spotted an old, rusted bridge up ahead. Without a second thought, I made a sharp turn onto the bridge, my tires screeching in protest. As I crossed the bridge, I glanced in my rearview mirror, half expecting the truck to follow. But it came to an abrupt halt at the edge of the bridge, its headlights illuminating the precipice. I continued down the road, my breathing ragged, until I was certain I had lost my pursuer. After miles of driving, I found a small, isolated gas station and pulled over to catch my breath. I needed a moment to collect my thoughts and consider what had just happened. I dialed 911 and explained the situation to the dispatcher, providing the best description I could of the relentless truck and its driver. The dispatcher assured me that an officer would be dispatched to investigate. As I waited for the police to arrive, I couldn't help but ponder the chilling encounter. Who was the driver of the truck, and why had they pursued me with such determination? The unsettling feeling of being watched lingered, and I couldn't shake the sense that I had narrowly escaped something malevolent. When the police officer arrived, I recounted the entire ordeal. They promised to investigate and provide me with any updates. As I resumed my journey, the weight of unease and the haunting memory of the relentless pursuit stayed with me. The highway, once a symbol of freedom and escape, had transformed into a place of dread. The night was dark, and the highway stretched endlessly ahead of me. Michael, had been on the road for hours, driving alone on Route 66, heading towards a destination that seemed increasingly distant. The only company I had was the hum of my engine and the rhythmic thump of my heart. I'd always found long drives soothing, a way to escape the worries and stresses of daily life. But tonight was different. Tonight, the open road felt like a trap, and the solitude had become a nightmare. The clock on the dashboard read 2:33 a.m., and the sparse traffic had dwindled to nothing. The dim glow of my headlights barely cut through the oppressive darkness that enveloped the highway. The occasional flicker of the roadside lamps served as a stark reminder of the desolation. My phone's GPS had lost signal miles ago, and my sense of direction had become disoriented. I couldn't remember the last time I had seen a road sign or another vehicle. Panic gnawed at the edges of my mind as I realized I was lost, truly lost, in the middle of nowhere. The night air grew heavy and oppressive. Sweat trickled down my temple, and the tension in the car was suffocating. I knew I needed to find a way back to civilization, but the highway seemed to extend into eternity. My gas tank was nearly empty, and I couldn't afford to be stranded in this desolate place. Just when I thought my predicament couldn't get any worse, I saw it in my rearview mirror, a pair of headlights in the distance. Relief washed over me as I anticipated the arrival of another traveler who could help me find my way. I slowed down, allowing the vehicle to catch up, and it soon pulled up behind me, tailgating dangerously close. The car was an old, beaten-up sedan, a relic from the past. It looked like it had been through countless miles of wear and tear. I couldn't see the driver through the tinted windows, and an eerie feeling crawled up my spine. Suddenly, the car's high beams blinded me in the rearview mirror. I tried to switch lanes to let them pass, but the car continued to tailgate me relentlessly. Panic returned, eclipsing my earlier relief. I picked up speed, hoping to put distance between me and the persistent tailgater, but the car matched my pace with eerie precision. Fear began to overtake reason, and I dialed 911 on my cell phone. The dispatcher's voice was a lifeline, but the connection was poor, and I struggled to explain my predicament. "Stay on the line, sir. We'll send an officer to intercept the vehicle," the dispatcher assured me. As I hung up, the tailgating car abruptly swerved into the adjacent lane, nearly causing a collision with an oncoming semi-truck. The truck driver blared his horn and flashed his lights, but the sedan continued to pursue me. The driver's actions had become increasingly erratic and aggressive. I spotted a sign indicating an upcoming exit, and without hesitation, I veered off the highway. The tailgater followed suit, refusing to let me escape. My heart pounded as I desperately searched for a gas station or any place of refuge. I soon came upon a desolate rest area, with a dimly lit convenience store and a flickering sign that read, "Closed." I pulled into the parking lot and screeched to a halt. The sedan pulled in behind me, blocking my only exit. Panicked and unsure of my options, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 once more, praying for a better connection this time. The dispatcher promised that an officer was on the way. I locked my doors, fearing the unknown driver behind me. The sedan's engine rumbled ominously, and the driver's side window rolled down slowly, revealing a face obscured by shadows. A voice emerged from the darkness, distorted and unrecognizable. "You should have stayed on the highway," it whispered. I sat frozen, my mind racing. The ominous warning sent shivers down my spine, and I knew I had to escape this nightmare. The sedan's driver opened the car door and stepped out, clad in dark, tattered clothing and holding an object that gleamed menacingly in the dim light. Desperation and adrenaline surged through me as I threw my car into reverse and slammed the gas pedal. I heard a deafening crash as the pursuing sedan collided with the convenience store. The impact pushed my car out of the rest area and back onto the highway. I sped away, my heart pounding, and soon spotted the flashing lights of a police car approaching. The officer pulled me over and, after hearing my harrowing tale, assured me that the tailgating vehicle had been found abandoned. The sinister driver had vanished into the night. As I drove away, the memory of that haunting encounter stayed with me. The highway that had once offered solace now bore the scars of a terrifying ordeal. I had escaped, but the horror of that night on Route 66 would forever haunt my nightmares. The relentless pursuit and mysterious driver remained an enigma, a chilling reminder of the horrors that could unfold on the open road.